So for the participation activity this week, I'm going to walk you through creating your first real kind of Android app with Android Studio. It's just going to be a simple converter app. It's got a label at the top, a place where you edit some, enter some amount of currency. Then you can either convert this to dollars or convert this to euros. We have two different convert buttons, and then the result is displayed down here. We also have a resulting amount label here that's laid out. It's all laid out in a linear row. So I'm going to run Android Studio. If you haven't installed this or configured it, you might want to watch the videos above. I've already had a project open, so it opened up here. So I'm going to do new project this way. If it opens up with other startup a screen, you can just open up a new project there too. I'm going to give this a name, so this is going to be Unit 3 Converter. Company name, just again, leave something there. This is where it's being stored, so kind of watch what folder that's in and make sure it's where you want. So I don't know why, but it has a weird limit where if your folder links exceed 100 characters, it has some trouble with that. It's a silly limitation, but I'm going to just change where this is stored. So we're going to leave this. I generally leave this at like Android 5 or 5.1 Lollipop. It hits a fair number of devices and gives us the features we want. So, and we're going to do phone or tablet. Or almost always going to do phone or tablet in this class, and almost always Android API 21. And we're going to start with an empty activity. In the previous recording, I think we did base activity. This adds some menus and codes, which complicates things for beginning programmers. So we're just going to do empty activity here. And leave the activity name and the layout name the same. And then wait for it to build this project. Now while it's building some projects, you'll see errors. Often it hasn't built what's called the R file, and there'll be errors here. You can watch the toolbar or the progress down here, and it should say Gradle building. Gradle again is the build environment for this, which how it compiles. So and it'll show a red line here that says there were errors, but eventually when after Gradle builds, it should fill this out. Now, if you saw in our beginning one, we didn't have some tools installed, and so it popped up some errors, Gradle errors, failures, and asked us to sync and build things. And so we looked at changing the SDK, bringing up the SDK manager, and looking what is installed in the SDK as far as the build tools and the platforms. So those should already be set now. We've done it once. We don't have to worry about it, hopefully, again. I do like this toolbar popped up. So if you don't see that, I'd suggest turning View Toolbar on. There's a couple different ways of viewing this left screen over here. One I sometimes use is project, and the other one is Android. We switch this to Android because it's a kind of simplified view of Android projects as we go. It opens up two files automatically. The first is the Android, the main activity.java file. Now, if you look in Java, there should be an Android test, a test, and then a normal file with, again, the domain or package put in there that we entered when we created this project. And again, main activity will be there. So for now, you don't have to look at the Android test or test stuff, just in the main activity. And then in resources, under layout, the main activity.xml layout should be there also. Those are the two things, and those are generally opened up automatically, and because those are the main things we're going to edit when you're working on a project. So let's do our layout. We're going to add some what I would call a label and some text fields here and some buttons to create this, but we want this in a linear fashion. So I'm going to go to the layout, again, resources, layout, activity underscore main.xml. This is the layout file. This shows our screen in normal and x-ray vision and lays out. Now by default it's what's called a constraint layout, so when I drag things on here and try to do things with them, it'll try to set them up in the right places. I can drag them anywhere I want, but they won't necessarily stay there. They are constrained, and I have got to, if I try to run this, there'll be errors. This view is not constrained, and so these controls all jump back to 0, 0. So if you use this, you have to be careful you don't jump back to 0, 0. What you have to do, and we won't go over this, but you've got to tie in these connections into certain areas to do certain constraints so that you can specify where these objects are in relation to each other. So to kind of keep from having to worry about all that with some of our beginning ones, we're going to change to a more simplified layout, not the constraint layout. So for now, I'm just going to delete. Well, let's leave those there, I guess. Let's look at the text view. So this is the layout in the GUI view. If I switch over to the text tab here, it'll show the layout in text view. So this is my main layout container here. And then this is, I added that the label in Android world, this is called a text view. A non-editable text field is called a text view. The button is just called a button. So there's a button here. There's also this hello world text view here. If it's an editable text, it'll be called an edit text field. So this shows the same thing. So you can edit either in design mode or in text mode. Either one works fine. You can do most things in either one, but a couple things are harder to do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change this layout. So in design mode, if I go under layouts, there's a couple different kinds of layouts, including linear layouts, either horizontal and vertical. And we're going to switch to this linear layout vertical. We could put one of these on over our other layout, but I'd like to get rid of this constraint layout. So I'm just going to go, and I can't change it here necessarily. So I'm going to go into my text view, and up at the top, the first line is an XML identification line. The next line runs this constraint layout, and it's a special Android constraint layout. So I'm going to highlight that whole area here. That android.support.constraint layout, and just switch it to linear layout. And if I start typing, it should show up here. So I'm going to put linear layout here. It should automatically change the bottom tag to linear layout also. And then it should, if you switch back here, switch this to a linear layout where things are all laid out. So now I'm going to go back here to linear layout. The one thing I'm going to change is change the orientation to vertical so that as you drag things on, they're just stacked vertically. Okay, so I changed it to linear layout, and that again was done by just putting the linear layout, changing what the constraint layout, the whole thing, to just a simple word linear layout. I'm going to leave everything here for now. Okay, so now we're going to do, again, we want label, view text, an edit text, a couple buttons, another view text, and an edit text here that we can do. So I have to get used to these Android terms for all these things. I've been working in Microsoft Visual Studio, and we have different terms for everything. So I'll try to get my terminology right. Okay. So I've got my first, well, let's look at the widgets up here. We've got our widgets, and then there's also these text widgets up here. You can also switch it to all and get them all. I'm just going to look at some of these widgets up here. So there's buttons that we can drag. So I'm going to drag, I've got one button there. I'm going to drag another button here, try to get it in the right spot. And I should be able to move these around. Okay, now sometimes things will fill the screen and sometimes they won't, and that's set by the width of the layout. If it's match parent, it'll fill the parent. So if I want this button to fill that screen, I will say match parent. Otherwise it'll match the content, so depending on how much type you type, it'll fill that in there. I'm going to delete this. It has some weird settings, and just drag another button up here so that they both look the same. Okay, I've got a label here. So if I go down the text, that's as a text view. So I have a text view here and a text view there. And I'm going to add some edit text so I can enter a number up here. So there's just a plain text up here that I can enter and a number text that we can enter. They're very similar, but they just have a setting. So let's put them both up here so we can kind of see them. So again, both of these will be edit texts here, edit text there, and an edit text there. But one thing that is set is the input type here and also the style of it. So the input type is what is expecting, and it'll do some checking here. So it's expecting maybe a person's name or just text here. And here it's expecting a number, and so the type is, I don't know if I can get this, move this so we can, I can do a decimal number or just a number here. And again, if I want them to enter some currency, I'd do that. One thing what this will do is that it will pop up different keyboards often on different phones. So if you just say number, it'll just pop up a numeric keypad, not the whole phone. I mean, not the whole QWERTY keyboard. So I'm going to leave that as a number, decibel, or a number, either one. I'm going to get rid of this one. So you just hit delete. So I've got this number here. Again, I can enter some initial text in there if I want, or some hint, some kind of ideas. Now, as far as changing the style and the font, it used to be you could actually change the fonts here. Now we've gone to styles, and so what I want to do is be able to change the kind of the style of things and how things are laid out. And there's a couple different styles. One is called holo, and one is called material. So often you'll see a whole app always using material layouts or holo layouts for things. So that's how we kind of change the appearance and the font size of these things, is like here. Now this is the edit text, the whole object. This is just the text view, which is kind of how it's actually displaying the text inside. So if I wanted this to be larger, I could do like a display 4 is very large, display 1, or I can change some of the results here if I wanted, but I'm just going to leave it as is. Okay, so I've got my text up here. I want that to say starting amount, so I'm going to click on that. I like to, oops, I don't want that. I want to have the width match the parent, not the height. And then for the text, rather than saying hello world, I'm going to say starting amount. And again, I'm not too picky. If you don't have to get this exactly the same, it's in my thing. My GUI guideline is just a guideline here, so you can enter whatever you actually want there for your currency converter. Just I want to have basics the same sort of layouts and stuff like that. So I've got this. Now I want to display the result here, and then have resulting amount. So I want this text field to say resulting amount. Now for this final display down here, I have a couple options. I could use an edit text field down here and just disable it so that people couldn't type in it, or I could just use a text view here that maps. I think in this previous example I used an edit text field that I disabled because I could kind of see the line underneath it, but I think this time I'm going to use a text view because I want to show you how you can edit and work in code with both an edit text field and a text view. So down here I'm going to just do a plain text. Wait, I don't want an edit text. I'm just going to do a text view down there. And I think I'm going to increase the font a little bit on it. So rather than small, maybe we'll do, let's see, it's using the material kind of layout. So I'm going to go down to material and choose one of the larger displays. Maybe so. Okay. Now we're going to change a couple things. We're going to make sure we have IDs, so on important things. So things that we're going to edit in code, like the buttons we're going to access in code, and this edit text and this text view, we're all going to edit in code. So I want to make sure they have IDs and they're useful IDs. So like this text view has a ID called text view 2. I'm going to leave it as text view, but I'm going to say text view result. It should be something that you can recognize in code. This button I'm going to set up and be, so I'm going to have one button. So this button is button convert to euro, and the other one will be convert to dollars. So I'll set those up. I'll also change these text fields. Okay, so I've got IDs on all of these four things that I'll edit in my code. I'm not worried about these labels that are just these little text views in here, but I've got these all named something. This ID is what we'll use in code, and I've got, I think, the initial setup looking okay. Now I was mentioning that generally on these they show the attributes over here. These are actually just the most common attributes. You can actually hit this button or this button to view all the attributes, and there's lots of attributes you can set in here, and then you can go back to these. But generally you'll be fine with the common attributes here. Okay, so we've got this layout set. Save that. And again, it saves it as an XML file here in the design mode. Okay, so now let's look at how we have to set this up. So I've got some reminders here about how we can access the like text and widgets here. So the first step was position the widgets and set the ID in the XML file, and we've done that. Now we want to declare some variables and initialize those variables so that we can use that text. So that happens in our Java file. So in our Java file here, we've got our main class here, and we've got an onCreate, which does our initialization. This is kind of our constructor for our activity or our screen. So I'm going to do some variables. I want to put those variables up here because I often are going to need them in multiple classes or methods in this class. And so again, here I'm going to need I'm going to be able to access this edit text field and this text view. I need one for both. This is the amount entered, and this is the resulting amount. So I'm going to edit type in the first one is an edit text. So I'm going to put in the edit text here. It starts with a capital E because it's a class, and so it should pop it up in the list here. To also add it, I've expanded the import, so you'll see that as you type it in, it should automatically add the import up here for you. So we're going to call our edit text amount. And again, we have a text view, so I'm going to type that in. There it is. Text. And that'll be my result. That will be our two events here. And again, it added these imports automatically. I'm just going to close the import, so it sets those up already. Sometimes we'll also declare the buttons, but I'm going to initially show you a way to set up buttons so you don't have to declare them necessarily right up here and process them. So going down in the onCreate method, this is kind of our constructor, and we'll do some initialization. So we have to link this variable, this edit text amount, with the XML file here. And it's kind of weird how we do that, but we do this. We use this find view by ID as this code, and we refer to this R file. The XML files are compiled into what's called an R file, which is this hidden Java file, and we don't need to know to worry about it. But you're going to do this a lot. You're going to just say edit text equals find. Let's see if I can type. Find view by ID, and it's always r.id dot and then the name of the text. So I'm doing an edit text. If I start typing, it'll show me edit text amount. That's what I called it, and that's why you try to give it a meaningful name. Similarly, for my text view result, that's the name above, is going to be, and I'm going to find view by ID, and I'm going to go r.id dot, and then this is a text view, and it's probably text view result here. So this will initialize, create a link between these variables and the XML fields on my layout, so that whenever I can access those values here. So I always have to make sure we do this in our onCreate, in our kind of constructor here. Next, we're going to add some code for the buttons. There's a number of ways of doing buttons, and I'm just going to show you one that's relatively simple to start with. Okay, so we can use the variables in code, but now we're going to set up the buttons. So we created the buttons out there. We're going to enter a method for the on-click value. And so this is kind of the default layout. I'm just going to copy that in here. And again, I wanted it as a separate method in my class here, so I'm going to do that. So public void. And so I'm going to make this, I'm going to say, call this a different thing. I'm going to say button. And then I'm going to call it one for dollars and another one for this. Now it says view. Now if I would have typed this in, I think it would have imported it automatically, but I pasted it in. So I'm going to just have to make sure I add it automatically. So it says say Alt Enter, so I can hit Alt Enter here, and it'll say import the class, and so I'll do that, and it'll add the import up above. So I'll put my code in here, and I'll want to do something similar for the convert to euros. So I'm going to give it, and again, it doesn't really matter what you call these, just so you remember their names and we can set them up in our field. So I've created these two methods. They have to be public void, and they have to have one parameter, a view here. So those are set up. Now, once I've set that up and saved this, I can go back to my XML file, click on my button, and one of the options is what to do when on click is selected. So since this is the dollar convert to dollar button, I'm going to say dollar click. I'm going to go down here, and for that one I'm going to say euro click. So I'm going to go set both of those up here. Now later on we'll look at different ways of setting these up, but this is a nice simple way to start for us. Okay, so this will be run when we do the dollar click. Now I'm going to grab some code then for processing and using this sort of stuff. So I'm going to go out and and I'm just going to grab this code and edit it and walk you through this code, and we'll see what it does. So what I'm going to go out there is I have some edit text. I'm going to go get when I do my conversion, I want to get my text here and convert this to a number. This is a string or a text field. I'm going to convert that into a number and save it so I can then multiply it by some factor to get this. So I'm going to go to edit text amount and do get text. That gets kind of a weird text object, so I'm going to convert that to a string because in Java I can edit strings pretty well. So I go edit text.amount, and again I'm using the variable that I declared here to access that value. I'm calling get text, and then I'm calling toString. So now I've got this as a string, but I really want it as like a double or a float. So I'm going to convert this. I'm going to call double.parseDouble. Remember from your Java class, this is how we convert a double or a string into a double. So I'm going to call double.parseDouble, and in that I'm going to put that in here. So this is going to result in a double. I'm going to save that. I'm going to declare a double. I'm going to use this double, I think. And say it's start money or some variable like that. Now I'm going to do my conversion. If I look online, let's say the current rate is, so Google says the current rate of dollars to euros is 0.8 here. So I'm going to use this. Now, in a real world, I would be actually going out to the web and grabbing those conversion rates, and we can actually do that, but we're not going to do that here. So I'm going to take my start money and multiply it by 0.8. So that'll be, since I'm in dollars, my dollar amount times 0.8, and that'll be my converted amount. And I'm saving that as this variable, and it's calling it a double again. So I've done my conversion now, and now I'm going to output it. I'm going to output it to this text field here, text view. So what's my text view called? It's called text view, and I'm going to call this set text. So in both of our texts, we will often use get text as our getter to get whatever's entered, and set text to set the text that's entered there. Those are our main ways we access our text fields. Both our edit text and our text views will have those. Get text and set text. So what do we want to set the text to? Well, we've just converted this money, so I'm just going to say converted money. I want it as a string, so I'm going to say toString now. I should probably be doing some formatting in here, but I'm just not going to worry about that today. So I'm just going to say toString and not worry about the formatting. Okay. Similarly, I want to do something, same sort of stuff when we convert to euros. So I'm just going to copy that code down here. If this money is euros, then I should be multiplying it by zero 0.8, not dividing it by 0.8, I think, and get this amount here. I could rename these things, but I think I've got okay names for everything here. So now I'm going to run this. I've plugged in my tablet into my computer using a USB drive. I could also run an emulator here. So I'm going to hit this run. It should look and see if I have any virtual devices. It'll show them here. Otherwise, if I have my tablet, it should have it here. So hopefully you'll see that. I've got another video above that kind of walks you through some of these issues. So hopefully you can get this either running on a virtual tablet or on a virtual device or your real device. Here it's showing my real device because I haven't created any virtual devices yet on this machine. So I'm just going to run it on there. You may have to enable USB debugging again, and every time you run it, you might have to watch your screen on your tablet to make sure it doesn't ask about USB debugging for the current run on that screen. So now I'm just going to wait for it to load up, and it's going to rebuild and send it to the device. Okay, so now it's run on my device. I get this little warning. It's trying to do instant run. But it has a problem because I have multiple user accounts on that machine, apparently. So, but here it pops up now. It pops up with a cursor in this first text window, and again, because we said that's a numeric text window. It pops up a numeric keypad here, and then I can enter some values here. And then I can click here, or I can click on my device. So again, I'm running a mirror, so this is actually on my real tablet, and I'm just mirroring it also on here so you can see it as I'm recording it. But I'm actually can click on the device itself. Now we can also run this on an emulator, but I can see it should be working in both cases with the right amounts. So about $45 converted to euros is about 36 euros, and if I have 45 euros, convert that to dollars, it's about $56. So that wraps this up. I can save and push this out now. Initially, we're going to be using GitHub and working with GitHub to it, but for this first assignment to kind of simplify things, I just want you to submit your project. So I want you to just submit those two files, the Java file and the XML file for the layout. So if I go in there, I found where I've saved this project, and I go in there, I go under the apps folder and then source folder and main. Now there's the Java and the resource folder. The Java will have the Java one. I have to go a couple folders deep into this, but there's my main activity.java that I have. Now I'm going to go back to Java. Let's go back to main, I guess. And if I go into resources, layout, there's the activity main. So those are the two files I want you to submit into Blackboard, just attach into the assignment. And I've tried to put a reminder of where these are located here for you. Okay? Feel free to contact me if you have any questions, or your instructor if it's not me. Again, when you're doing this initial setup, there's lots of little things that can go wrong. Sometimes it's easier to give me a call or a quick text or something, and we can work things out. Good luck.